our ability to distribute contraception throughout the region. These two red stars outside of Andava are the CBD supervisors. They supervise all of these community-based distributors. Every month they travel the region to check in with the other community agents, make sure they're not having any problems, report anything back to us, to make sure they have enough stock, and to deal with helping train them. And so this program has really increased our ability to get out to some of these remote areas and provide family planning options. These are just some of the medicines that we have: 3-month, 1 month, 3 month, 3-year, 10-year options, and we get most of our medicines from Population Services International. They provide our short-term medicines, and Marie Stopes International provides our long-acting and reversible contraceptives, such as implants and intrauterine devices. So they've been very helpful in helping us improve access to these remote regions. We've also used a system of peer educators to go around and talk about the benefits of family planning, as well as about STIs and HIV/AIDS. We have about 14 of them who go around and have participated in theater events, community meetings, and some counseling stuff. And last October, we initiated something that's going to become an annual event, we hope. It's called FISA-able. FISA is actually the how they refer to family planning there. It's the Malagasy branch of the International Planned Parenthood Foundation. FISA is, and so we just made a play off of it because it also means to play. So FISA-able was this big soccer tournament that we did in 3 villages. We got all the villages around those main hubs to come together, and at halftime we would have the peer educators doing talks about family planning. In the evening, we would show music videos interspersed with family planning messages, and have Population Services International also has lots of videos about where doctors are talking about family planning and so forth, and talking to locals about their use of it and their benefits. And so we showed these to a crowd of over 900 people. We had theater events where the peer educators were kind of showing the differences between a family that had 10 kids and a family that had 3 kids, and how they could afford much more easily to put their children through school and take them to the doctors. And we also gave contraceptives. We gave condoms out to all of the players with notes about STIs and what some of the symptoms were, because this region has one of the highest rates of STIs in the country. So just wrapping up some of the successes that we've had in terms of patient visits. In our first 2 years, we only saw about 500 people altogether. In our 3rd year, which 3 months before the end of it, we introduced this community-based distribution program. That number jumped up to almost 1,150. So big surge in patient visits. And in the last 5 months of this year 4, we've already seen almost as much as we saw in year 3 combined, in all of year 3 in just the last 5 months. So in total over this entire time, we've provided over 800 years a couple years of protection. So basically, if you think about one packet of birth control pills providing 1 month of protection, we've provided 800 years of protection throughout the region. That's a standard measurement for how effective a program is. Also, the contraceptive prevalence rate. Before the program started, 8.3% of the women in Andava and Andava-Doka were using family planning options. 10.7% around the entire Velindrika region. Again, just with these numbers, Andava-Doka, we've been working there for 3 years. The rest of Velindrika, we've been, in terms of family planning stuff, we've only been working there for the last year and a half. So there's been a significant jump, though. 42% of women in Andava-Doka now are using family planning. We've been running a weekly clinic there for 3 years. That's kind of the base of our education efforts, and 42% of women are using it. So there's been a dramatic drop in birth rate there, smaller families, more people going to school. And so anyway, this compares, just to kind of give you some national comparison or regional comparison, the Madagascar is broken up into 22 regions. The region that we are in, the average for that entire area is 11.6. So if you combine this, the Andava into the Velindrica average, it's about 34%, so well over the 11.6 average. Some of the challenges, though, that we've encountered are just there's a lack of education throughout the region, and so we're dealing with very low capacity people in terms of writing and reading, and so when you're trying to work with them to prescribe birth control pills, it's a little tricky making sure that they're going through all the proper protocols and doing it safely. And so we spent a lot of time. We've had trainings with them every couple months to ensure that they're able to provide this safely and up to standards. And then also just the people in the village working with them, a lot of them don't have any sense of how the body works. I mean, most have not gone to school. The average woman that we're dealing with probably has 2 years of education, and so just working with them to understand how the stuff works and why they should be things that they need to be concerned about, and so it's been a challenge to kind of impart that basic biology understanding to them. So, and then also just the isolation. We're 9 hours north of the largest town in the region by nice 4x4. And to get to a lot of the places is a full day boat ride, and so that's also been hard to get information out to places and to get if there is a problem somewhere to get that referred back to us takes a long time. So anyway, working to try and improve systems. I actually just had a meeting last week with some people to look at using SMS messages as a way of doing reporting. And notifying, because we just got cell phone reception in the area a couple months ago, which has made a world of difference there. So anyway, looking forward to some of the things we're just now starting to do. We have MacArthur funding now, which has allowed us to begin this community health program. We've been focusing on water, sanitation, and hygiene initiatives. We're going to be doing a lot of well improvements and latrine building and promoting water purification. Things such as Suro here is basically a chlorine thing. We've trained all of our community agents in how to treat basic diarrheal issues and how to promote hand washing and improve sanitation so that diarrhea isn't as big of an issue. 56% of 56% of visits to the local clinic have been for diarrheal issues. So it's the biggest issue around there. Our survey said that's what most families are concerned about, and so we've just done that within the last 2 months. And we're starting a maternal and infant care program. We'll be hiring a midwife shortly to start doing trainings and provide antenatal services, and so and working with some of the traditional birth attendants to improve their skills. And looking to the future, there we go. We're also broadening our scope to start working a little more inland. This here is Befandefa, the commune capital. If you look out this way, this is the Mikea National Forest, National Park, newly established within the last couple of years. And we'll be moving into this area to provide services with a new grant that we've just received from USAID. And so this will also allow us to increase north and south along the coast to cover approximately 150 kilometers of coast. And so we'll be providing a lot more comprehensive coastal zone management. And again, that's courtesy of USAID. The UNFPA has kind of allowed us to kickstart and get this program really going within the last year. MacArthur has just funded us for the next 3 years, and to continue our services and provide more of the maternal and infant care stuff. And USAID has just given us funding to begin introducing some of these water and sanitation, hygiene, addressing those issues. So that's kind of the quick rundown on what Blue Ventures has been doing, and thank you very much. I look forward to your questions and comments afterwards.
Is it a movie?
Yeah, I'm going to start with the video and then I'll do that. So I'm going to start with the video, but first I just want, Jeff was very kind to say that the Nature Conservancy is working in Madagascar, but I don't want people to think that the Nature Conservancy actually is working in Madagascar. So we're not, there are lots of fine conversations, fine organizations who are working there, so the Conservancy is not, but I do currently work for them. So I thought I'd start with a video. If we...
Before you start, it's not on the screen yet. So may need to do the F whatever it is, F8. There we go.
And then how you get, full screen? I don't know.
Yeah, here's the full screen. Let's see if we can get the volume.
She seemed to be speaking very slow.
Slow motion.
Yeah. Slow motion Malagasy? It's not the volume.
No, you changed this to 30x, so now it's playing at full speed.
Okay. Let's try how to get the full speed.
Just,
Hit play.
yeah.
Nahazo ny fifanana tamin'ny sety izay mpikambana ao amin'ny voarisalama ary dia tena resy lahatra tanteraka ary nampiatra mihitsy ny fomba IFFP ka sy sarotra aminahy nanentana ny olo teo an-tanàna.
This additional training helped animators already working in the communities to communicate more effectively. They then focused on promoting the most important actions and got more people involved in community projects.
Ary tonga koa moa ny fiarahamonina mendrika dia anisany tena nampiroborobo ny fokon'olona sy ny andraikitry ny koloarena tamin'ny fanentanana. Vokatry izay dia nisy ny fanaovana compost na zezipako ary ao koa ny fanaovana dobo-trondro. Io misy dobo izay nataon'ny koloarena eto amin'ny tanàna Tsimbahambo. Dia hita fa tena mihamaro ny olona agny ivelany maka trondro eto izay ompiana agny aminy. Hita fa nanasara sy nanamafy ny zavatra efa nisy teo aloha izay nampanaovy ny programa LDI ny fisian'ny fiarahamonina mendrika.
Dia ny tena hita hoe tena niakatra aloha dia ny nazahoana ny trondro dia vaksiny ny ankizy. Tena faran'izay zavatra natahoran'ny olona ary tena nalaina misy le ray aman-dreny zaza teo aminay nanao vaksiny, tena nisotomina ny tanana misy tamin'ny voalohany. Amin'izao zany izy dia azo lazaina hoe tena fa mandeha antsitrapo satria efa samy nahatsapa hoe ilaina ty zavatra ty ary angamba ny ankizy rehetra teraka tato anatin'ny hoe ray taona tato anatin'izay dia saikasaika vita vaksiny daholo.
Dia ny tena irina zany mbo hitohizana izy ty koa mbola hanaovana ny fifaninanana ihany koa amin'ny taona ambony io ka mba hatao mahenika ny fokotany 400 ato amin'ny commune Tolongoina izy io ka na dia sy mba hatratra ny tanàna maneran'ny commune. Izy amin'ny antony inaovana izay zany dia fa hita fa misy ny fahasapana eo amin'ny lafin'ny fambolena, eo amin'ny lafin'ny fahasalamana, indrindrandrindra momba ny fikaziana ny tontolo iainana ka sara dia sara raha mba atao zao ezaka zao mba ho fanasarana ny lafim-piainana.
So Lisa was saying that's an old video, and it is. Why I showed it is because he was talking about the predecessor to the project that I worked on. And at the end, Jean-Baptiste said what we really want is for this program to be scaled up. to work with all 14 villages in our commune. I'm looking for my presentation. And that's what my project that I worked with did, was scaled it up from working with 3 villages in the community to working with all 14 at the commune level. Where is the...
Right over here, yeah. You can't even see.
Oh, there it is.
I still think you need this or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. I was
If
gonna say.
you can do
So Lisa really spoke about the work at the national level. Matt really took it down to a very local level. And then the work that I was doing in Madagascar is really in the middle. So Matt said that you were working with about a population of about 7,000 people. We were targeting a population of about 250,000 people at the provincial level in Fianarantsoa and Sioux province. And essentially, we were working with USAID partners, with Malagasy NGOs, and with government ministries in an attempt to scale up an approach that, as Lisa said, has been tried over many decades in Madagascar, but to scale it up from the village level to the commune level, which is equivalent to about a county administrative unit of governance in the United States. And we were targeting about 20 communes in Fianarantsoa and Sioux province over a period of about 3 years. And like I said, we were targeting 250,000 people. I think I can just, does this work? So this is, Lisa already showed this with better pictures than what I have here. But as Lisa described, there is a long history of collaborative work in Madagascar, dating back to, including in Fianarantsoa and Sioux province, dating back to the ICDP era in the early 1990s, of which there were a few parks in Fianarantsoa that participated in that. And then in 2005, a couple of months after I arrived in Madagascar, actually, I remember vividly this meeting that we had in Tana to talk about this nature, wealth, and power concept that IRG and others had developed here in Washington for natural resources management in Africa. And I remember the group that I was working with, I don't know if there's anyone here that was in my group. I think Lisa and I were in different groups, but we had oranges on the table, and so we used oranges and straws, I think, or pens to sort of form, you know, nature and health were the basis of development for Madagascar. If those were managed well, you could get wealth, and then, you know, power was sort of the central thing that you needed for everything to work well. And so, you know, as Lisa said, in Madagascar, we adopted that framework to include health as well as nature, wealth, and power. And that really fit with both the goals of USAID and the goals of the government of Madagascar at the time. And, I mean, when you think about it on a more basic level, you know, we talk about, single sector work. If you think about your own life, how would you divide your life into, single sectors? You know, would you be able to do that on a daily basis? Probably not. And, where would certain things fall, and where would Facebook fall? But essentially, we were. So this is where Fianarantsoa and Sioux province is, and then Matt can point to where you were.
Down here.
Kind of across. But Fianarantsoa and Sioux, I don't know if it still is, but it used to be the poorest province in Madagascar, which is not necessarily the best thing to achieve. But essentially it was because a large majority of the population is very rural and very isolated. I think when I started there, maybe 1/3 of the population in the forest corridor didn't even have radio access. So imagine if you just had no way of knowing what was going on in the rest of the world. And one of the things that we did do was help improve that. But what we did was we essentially worked at 2 different levels, at the regional or project level, and then also at the local level. So at the regional level, we used something called the Eco-Regional Alliance, which Lisa talked about those, which was basically a coordinating body for all of the USAID partners who were working in our region on natural resources management, on health, on economic growth, and on good governance. And it was, a coordinating body. We met on a monthly basis, and we also invited and included the local planning body, the Malagasy planning body that was responsible for managing the forest corridor. They were invited to and participated in our monthly meetings. So we had sort of the regional coordination, and then at the local level, we had an initiative called Champion Commune. And Champion Commune built upon prior initiatives that had been developed in Madagascar over the course of several years at the village level. And what we were trying to do was scale it up to the commune level. Champion Commune was very effective in Madagascar. It was really effective at mobilizing communities to publicly set their own development goals, to measure progress towards those goals, and to work within a specific time frame, say, 8 to 12 months to achieve those goals. And then to have a public recognition of when a community either met or failed, sometimes, at meeting those goals. And then often there were prizes that were awarded at the end. And an added benefit of the public nature of the Champion Commune projects were that it made the USAID partners' work more public and transparent, and so it became less of a sort of foreigner or VASA initiative and more of a process that the communities owned themselves. So we had three main goals with Champion Commune in FNR and Sioux. First, we wanted to have a strong overlap with communes adjacent to the forest corridor. And that was Lisa showed a slide that had different colors of where the HPN and the environment and the good governance USAID projects were working. And so that's what we wanted, was for people to be working simultaneously in as many communes as possible. Second, we wanted to have activities that actually simultaneously benefited more than one sector. So an example of that is when you're doing reforestation activities, instead of just planting a regular forest tree, plant a papaya, which, papaya is very high in vitamin A, so then people are consuming, you're reforesting a denuded slope, and people are harvesting something that's good for them nutritionally. Or they can sell the papaya at the market and get money for their families. The third thing that we wanted to do was really capitalize on the prior experience that Malagasy NGOs had in implementing these integrated projects. Because as Lisa and Matt both mentioned, the capacity of the local NGOs and civil society in Madagascar wasn't all that strong, in large part due to isolation. So we also recognize the importance of coordinating our work with multiple government ministries and régions from the village level all the way up to the provincial level. And one aspect of doing that was to really involve them in all stages of both of the monitoring and the evaluations for the Champion Commune cycle. In retrospect, it looks relatively easy up on the slide, or maybe it doesn't, but it actually really wasn't. And for people like Matt and Lisa who have been involved in work in Madagascar, or those of you who have been involved in integrated projects on the ground in other countries, it's never as easy as it looks. I mean, in Madagascar, it was really challenging because, sometimes in FNR and Sioux, a city where I lived of 250,000 people, you would just lose your internet access for 1 or 2 weeks, just completely lose it. Other times, it would take you several days to get into the field. It would take, I remember one trip specifically where it took us 4 hours to drive 16 kilometers, which you can really walk faster than that. But despite the challenges, the communes who participated in Champion Commune achieved many of their goals in multiple sectors. And these are some of the health goals, which are really address the standard maternal child health challenges in Madagascar, which Matt detailed. However, for the other sectors, there really weren't standard indicators, and so we had to develop those. And so what we did was we worked with both the health and the environment partners of USAID and with the Malagasy NGOs to develop specific indicators. And these are the indicators that we developed. And then we worked with the communities to have them figure out what activities they wanted to pursue that would achieve these goals. One example of a sort of integrated activity was that Rural Farmers Association members would teach people how to plant orange flesh sweet potatoes, which are rich in vitamin A, so they can either be eaten by people that will improve their health, who are mainly just eating plain rice, or they could sell them at the local markets, or they could do both. And so this is an example of a thing that would be good for multiple reasons in multiple sectors. And over time, we also improved the sustainability of the approach by reinforcing the capacity of communes to use Champion Commune as a way to achieve their own development goals. So every commune had communal development plans, and so we linked the approach to their communal development plans, and then actually in the second year, communes that were really motivated applied for external funding, not from USAID, but from other organizations to implement their development goals. I think Lisa already showed this picture, but everyone has this picture in their Madagascar slides. So why were we able to achieve the integrated results? Well, one of the main reasons is because when Lisa and her colleagues were developing USAID's strategic plan back in 2002, they made it an integrated strategic plan. So if you can, for those of you who are fortunate or unfortunate enough to know how USAID strategic plans work, you know, there are objectives that you have to achieve. And what they did was they had objectives that were the same in multiple categories. So some examples of objectives that were shared by both the health, population, and nutrition team and the environment and rural development team were demand for family planning and health services and products in priority conservation areas increased. So it's linking, you know, improving access to family planning in areas of high biodiversity. Another example is water resource management for agriculture and households improved. So water as something that you have to work across for the NRM and the household WASH perspective. A third example is high nutritional value agriculture products increased, not just agriculture products, but ones that were good for people. And really, it was visionary to do this, and it forced the USAID partners to actually work together, because they were reporting to Lisa and others on their results.
But I think the contractually obligated
Right.
is very important.
They were, yeah.
And I just actually, on that front, just saw a presentation just recently about this collaborating, adapting, and learning, this new, for Uganda, which has some of those same principles of how do you ensure this. And you have to, I talked about incentives. Contractual is one incentive. And, you know, I think that, you know, and I don't think people saw it negatively, you know, and that's why
No,
I'm glad
it wasn't.
you brought it up, not me.
Right, yeah. So this is a, I hope everyone can see the words on this, but Saratanana is a commune that's adjacent to Ranamafan National Park, which is one of the famous national parks in Madagascar, very close to Fianarantsoa city in the province. And that was one of the communes that actually achieved all of the goals that they had set for themselves in all 4 sectors. And this is sort of what the community said in their own words as to why is it beneficial to integrate health and family planning and environmental and rural development activities together. So there are also positive benefits for the USAID partners aside from meeting our contractual obligations. One was that we were actually able to leverage additional external support for radio access, for cell phones, and for improved communication for communities in the forest corridor, because we were advocating together as an eco-regional alliance to external, to other donor agencies. And also for family planning funding, we got extra family planning money for the communities around the forest corridor. We also built upon USAID investments in the rehabilitation of the FCO, which is a railroad that goes cuts through the economic corridor of Fianarantsoa province. And we also worked to establish a Fianarantsoa-based WASH committee, water, sanitation, and hygiene, that had over 30 institutional members. And then from that, each of the 5 régions in the province developed their own WASH committee. So, of course, there are always lessons learned in projects like this, and I think this is really sort of the, looking back and then the way forward for when there are more people working on the ground again in Madagascar. And one is that, environmental geospatial targets like a 250-mile-long forest corridor are really hard to work in because the geographic corridor doesn't line up with the governance, the administrative units at both the commune, provincial, and region level. And so it was really hard to creatively coordinate and communicate together. And also there was never any cell phone access or internet in the forest corridor, let alone radio in some places. Also, when we really tried hard not to do this, but the Ecoregional Alliance ended up competing with the local planning body that was responsible for coordinating the work in the forest corridor, and largely that was because we had funding for communication and transportation and they didn't. And so, it was the typical thing that you often get in Africa where, someone calls you and then they hang up really fast because they don't have any credit on their cell phones, and then you have to call them back. And that was it happened all the time. But that, it just shows a larger case of, people who are paid by the government don't have money to go into the field. Also, USAID's priorities changed, as Lisa demonstrated. The funding priorities changed pretty dramatically over the years, and the Malagasy government priorities changed. And it was hard for small Malagasy NGOs to adapt to those policy changes at the field level. From the rural farmers' perspective, the farmers that were living in the forest corridor really wanted money to improve irrigation infrastructure because they wanted to be able to grow more rice because that's important for them. And USAID wasn't able to provide money to do that, but working together, the alliance was able to advocate for other donors to fund those costs. And one example of that was the World Bank. It was a project called PSDR that really supported small-scale development in rural communities. They were able to fund a lot of small-scale projects in the communes where we were all working together. Let's see. Some of the other challenges were that the very nature of multi-sectoral programs is that they have the highest benefit in the areas that are the most remote, which, your project demonstrates that for sure, because these are the areas where people are literally left out in the cold. They don't have any access to government health clinics. They don't have any access to, schools in some cases, or, agriculture extension agents. And it's also, those are the most expensive places to work and the hardest areas to work in. And, USAID recognized that it was important to work in those areas, even though they could have easily focused on, high population dense areas in more urban settings. And then also monitoring the program was very expensive. It was important to do that in a public way, but it costs a lot of money to get out into the field, especially because you're bringing additional people with you because the government staff don't have any money to go out into the field. So when you're going, you're bringing all of them with you. And that was expensive. And so from a sustainability perspective, it wasn't as sustainable as it could be. And then, once USAID pulled out of Madagascar after the recent coup in 2009, the focus, as Lisa said, has really turned towards humanitarian efforts. And so the question now is, what are the long-term impacts of these, really creative and innovative approaches? What are the long-term impacts of the work that we did with Champion Commune and FNR and Sioux? And I guess in closing, I would just encourage, USAID and other donors to look at these types of programs in the future when they go back into countries like Madagascar. And then finally, I just wanted to thank the University of Michigan and the Global Health Fellows Program for funding my time in Madagascar, and then also all of the NGOs and the USAID partners that I collaborated with when I was there. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kristen. Well, many thanks to the three of you. You did line up with these kind of different levels of analysis and different terrestrial versus marine perspectives. So you've given us a lot to think about, both kind of where we were and where we are, hopefully where we're going. So why don't we throw the floor open for Q&A. We're going to steal that microphone back from you, Lisa, so folks can pose their question. The mic, Kaylee can start right up here. Yeah, why not? And we'll go from. Please, go ahead.
I'm Helen Raffel at Resources for the Future, and I have 4 questions which I will say very quickly, and I don't know how long the answers will be. First of all, rising sea levels. How does that affect what happens along your shoreline? If I can remember all my questions. Secondly, in order to substitute for using wood for burning, did you give people solar cookers, metal stuff that just heats food with the reflection of sunlight? Thirdly, and this really reveals my ignorance, was it originally a French colony? Is that why there's French speaking? And does that mean that there were some Catholic proselytizing, and does that interfere with your family planning program? And fourth, I have about 6 questions, but I'll stop at 4, I think. Fourth, you have that wonderful water that everybody, that big picture that everybody puts into their presentation. Is that replenished by monsoon rains so that there's no worry about it running out, or are the mountains so high that you do have glaciers that are melting and so forth? So I'm worried about the water supply.
Okay. Do you want to take those quickly, and then we'll cover some more? Anyone? Climate impacts, long-term stress?
We'll let you take that one.
Okay. In terms of rising sea levels, it hasn't affected anything yet. Obviously, there are predictions that it will be rising. We're working to establish some resiliency, to build in adaptation measures. If there are smaller families, there are less people who would be affected by it. They're more mobile. Through improved health, they have more resources basically to adapt to that. They can move back to other areas. Migration is a very common thing in that area. The population is constantly shifting as people migrate up the coast to fish, and so migrating to other islands that are higher, or migrating to higher parts of the coastline are all options available to them. In terms of wood for burning, we did a big program with cook stoves that was going really well for a while, and another organization has now stepped in and is doing that, called ADIS, and they're working with some solar stoves, but they also have some improved cook stoves that we used to market around the area, and in terms of the impact of Catholicism in the area, yes, it was a French colony, and it gained its independence in the early 60s, and I'd say about 80% of the area is Catholic. There's Catholic churches have been in that area for, I think the first one was built in actually not until the 50s, and there are several Catholic schools throughout the region, so it is a big part of life. But it doesn't seem that that all the messages of Catholicism have gone through. People have been knocking at the clinic door for stuff, knocking it down. So it really has not seemed to be a barrier to introducing this at all. And I'll let one of you guys feel the water replenishment stuff.
That's the only thing that Madagascar has a lot of. Well, where I was working, at least, that's.
I mean, it's water management that's probably one of the biggest issues. You saw the one picture that I had was really, I mean, that's their biggest problem is the runoff because of the deforestation. The water, you have the runoff into the rice fields, and so water management is really their much bigger issue when. Yeah, I mean, there doesn't seem to be an issue of on the east side. Now, you have to remember that Madagascar is like a mini continent. And so the southern part of the island is all drought-prone area. So it's a very different type of ecosystem. So the area you saw is the east coast. I mean, the picture is where you have all of your humid forest. And therefore, you're not having problems with quantity of water. It's the management of water in those areas. Yeah, right. No, I think not yet, yeah. But there's, because you have also so much cyclone coming in there, so you have a lot of rain coming in. But if the forest can hold the water, that's your problem. That's the issue. So maybe I will just make also a comment on the family planning in Catholic. I did work for Catholic Relief Services then when I first started there, and so I would also tend to agree that you just really don't see that in terms of the Malagasy Catholic population there. And even during the Ravalomanana years, the Ministry of Health was changed to the Ministry of Health and Family Planning. If anything, though, now they've taken family planning off, just like we are in our Congress, taking it out. You can't use that term anymore, and that they've taken it. It's no longer. It's just the Ministry of Health. And so, but it's the people it's the rural populations who are looking for those services. And you have had an incredible increase in contraceptive utilization in Madagascar. I mean, it really has been very positive. And USAID has been a big supporter of it over 20 years. I mean, it was the first really health-related program dating back to 1992.
Is there any perceived progress on changing addressing the limitations on the funding? What can go? Is that
we were just talking about that, Tim and I, before. Not at the present time. There is a new government that was just put into place that they saying are a consensual government, but there's always nobody ever agrees that it's consensual. So until that is resolved, until I think there's a democratically elected president, you're going to still see that constraint in terms of funding. And the funding that they're receiving from AID cannot go to government services. It can go directly to rural communities and at the community level. So that's why I was saying during this time period, it's really a focus back on the communities. And that's why I say very much, to me, it was like what we saw back in the early 1980s, before you had a really robust government that really was driving and playing that leadership role of really being the NGOs and the Catholic and the church structure, very strong church structure, which is very fundamental in time periods like this. They really maintain the services that are needed during that time period.
Some other questions? Yes, Tim, Jason, was there another hand over there?
Tim Resch, USAID Africa Bureau. This is going to sound like a softball question, but I really don't know the answer to this is to Matt on what's been the impact of the coup in your region. I mean, is it so far out that the government never touches?
What coup?
Yeah, right, exactly.
There's been people do not really. I mean, so few people have radios out there, as Kristen was saying. I mean, that people don't really know what's going on, and in the commune head, I'm sure there's a little more information coming through, but still, I mean, the average villager really has no idea what's happening in the capital, and they really don't care as long as they're out fishing and life goes on.
Yeah, I got an uncle in Minnesota that doesn't think it matters who's the president.
Sky, could you give it to Jason there?
Thanks for the presentations. I like the three levels, sort of talking from governance and USAID, the community level, and in between. I think each of the stories that I've seen talking about taking PHE and scaling it up to some sort of next level, beyond the community level, it always talks about working with local government units, communities, whatever governance structure. And that seems to present two challenges. One is a lack of capacity at that level. So do people understand? They're very sectorally based. And the second is the whims of donors and governance. And so, while we're really pushing to scale up and reach more people with this innovative approach, is it possible that this is just a community-based approach that will remain that? That's maybe a devil's advocate question, because most of you know how I feel about it. But it's a question for both of you.
I mean,
hold on. I'm supposed to ask one more question, and I forgot about this. This is to Kristen before I lose the mic. You're at the Nature Conservancy, and you didn't talk about maybe what the Nature Conservancy is doing, not in Madagascar, but elsewhere on population health and environment.
I can try or I don't know if Lisa wants to take the first one. But I mean, my understanding is that, when Madagascar went through decentralization in the early 2000s, was that ideally, eventually, the communes were supposed to be receiving money from the government to implement their communal development plans. In some countries like the Philippines, the local government actually get money to do their development work, but in Madagascar, it gets lost somewhere, between the capital and the commune. But that's the long-term goal, and so I think our goal was to help them, by doing the integrated approach. That was a way that they could implement their commune development plans, was by using an integrated approach instead of, taking the money, in a stovepipe manner. So that was the goal, but I don't know. Did any communes get money?
I think that, again, you had this kind of shift in 2002 towards, you had these communal development plans that were being developed, and they actually were developed before you put into place the regional development plans, and then they fed into the regional development plans, and then you had it being fed into this Madagascar Action Plan. So there was quite an extensive planning process that was happening that was quite holistic and comprehensive. I don't tend to use the word integrated. That's my own bias. I don't like using it because I think it means that everyone thinks that everyone has to do everything together, and also it comes with some negative baggage. But I think there was that, looking at that, and there was a real push of getting the different the donors and the NGOs to try and work within those frameworks. And we were moving there, but you don't turn that on a dime. And the country didn't have enough time. And now what worries me is that I think we have gone back to really working at it, maybe village, maybe not just maybe village, maybe you can have a couple, interfuktan, maybe some communes where you have a mayor who's really dynamic. And, and I think that is where it sits now. And, maybe that's where we can have the most impact, too. And, I think at some point you have to kind of accept that. I mean, yes, we want to go up to scale, and I think we felt that we could in Madagascar. But that's where you have the, the political, complexities that didn't allow us to continue on that, in that direction. And so I don't think we should feel that we've lost that, because I think, most places in Madagascar, they don't even know. There was a change in presidents. Oh, there was an election. So, there's just such as someone said, a fault between what's happening at the national level and what's happening at the rural level. And I think you could see that in our presentations. And I think that's the reality. And how do you address that? And I think the best is you just keep moving forward. But that's, the country will never will get to the next stage of development. I mean, that's what I've seen. People come into Madagascar and they say, oh, it's just on the verge of taking off. And I heard that for 28 years. And, and what do you do? I don't know. I mean, I'm still scratching my head. I had to come to the States to give it some time to think about it and maybe learn lessons learned from other countries. And so I think that's a very good question. And I don't think there's an easy answer.
And then for TNC, we're not currently doing any integrated PHE work, although we are in the planning stages of launching an integrated PHE project in western Tanzania along Lake Tanganyika with Pathfinder.
Great to have TNC back in the fold. Okay, Scott. And over here.
Dick Erdman, former ambassador to Algeria and interim ambassador to Saudi Arabia. And I happen to be related to Matt. Distantly. I have a question. You focused on internal governance, local governance, and NGOs active there. What about foreign economic activity which has dire economic impacts? I'm thinking of the mining operations in the south. I've heard that the Japanese have very aggressive fishing techniques, which obviously deplete fishing resources off the coast. I also read Korea has taken a very long-term lease on a massive part of the land in Madagascar. I don't know what the environmental impact of that is, but is anyone addressing these issues?
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll answer that because I was very, of course, in USAID was very much interacted a lot with the mining companies, extractive industries, and we actually put into place what was called a Global Development Alliance with Rio Tinto in the southern part of the island where they're mining ilmenite. And actually, I mean, this is a very good, again, it was a very, I think, progressive, innovative way of trying to move forward where we took that regional development plan and we worked with the chef de région where it had all of the different elements of nature, health, wealth, and power. And we aligned our programs to those pillars of the regional plan, and then the mining company also came in on a one-to-one match with U.S. government funding and brought in a lot of family planning activities, looking at HIV/AIDS, looking at particularly on the health sector, but also looking at natural resources management. And it had to be additional, had to be above what is already in their environmental and social plan in terms of mitigating against the mining activities. And it was a very, I think it was a very
positive relationship. I think there was some direct, very positive benefits. We worked a lot on the governance structure, but with changes in government, that particular partnership has gone by the wayside. But the commitment of Rio Tinto has remained. And I think that you also see it in the big nickel mining that's going on. The Rio Tinto kind of set the bar very high. And I think what we've tried to do over the years is really ensure that the other extractive industries are responding. Obviously, when you have the current political setting, the powers to be are wanting to line their pockets, and so they're kind of not looking and kind of looking sideways to a lot of the illegal logging activities that are going on there now. In terms of the fishery activities, there also, I think the Ministry of Fisheries was actually of Agricultural, it's Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries, was trying to put in an observatory. You might know a little bit more about, trying to look at what's coming in, how to address that. But what we found during this crisis is there's just been basically open access to natural resources of all kinds. And so we've gone back even to allowing some mining companies coming in that don't have adequate environmental impact assessment. So it was a huge issue as soon as the political crisis in 2009. And I served as president of a governance committee trying to address the illegal logging. And there's really just nothing you can do because it's all about money. And, it didn't really matter. It was about a lot of money. And, and it was bankrolling, and it continues to bankroll this transitional government, which is, so in that way, it's there's some people who are very cynical and very pessimistic about it. On the other hand, I think you did have some of those local communities in at least those regions where you had a strong USAID or other donor presence working around some of these protected areas who did speak out, who did form a group of civil society and spoke out against these illegal logging activities. Did they really have an impact? I would say pretty minimal, but you did see that more emerging of a civil society who were trying to address some of this illegal exploitation and extractive industries that were kind of going over, not maintaining their respect to environmental norms. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. That actually never happened and was, they say, was a driving factor to what brought about the coup d'etat in 2009. Now, there's differing opinions on that, but yeah, so that never happened. Yeah.
There are two questions here on the side and then in the middle.
Yeah, I have a question, I guess, directed towards Lisa in particular, and it comes to the issue. It's related to earlier questions about capacity building, in particular on the level of policy with a goal of long-term investments in better governance. So, for example, has anyone come along and proposed making investments in strengthening institutions with a goal of stronger centralized governments? We ran into a similar situation in Panama and simply found that our best alternative was to identify promising young candidates and send them off for graduate degrees, have them go get educated outside and then come back and enrich the country.
You can hit it, we're going to take a couple so we make sure we get them all before. Right next to the gentleman, there's another one. Yeah.
I'm Roderick Hodges. I served in Peace Corps with Matt in Madagascar. I was there for 3 years. And I had a question for Lisa, actually. In all of your time there, I just wanted to ask sort of what were the greatest achievements that the development community made or had over the time that you were there?
Okay, and then Sky, gentleman in the middle, and then out here on the wing.
I'm Phillip Allen. I'm impressed with the projects that you've been describing. I'm worried that there are not enough of you. Particularly, I think Lisa may be optimistic about the return of democracy and international recognition to the regime. But let's see how that pans out. The 2011 budget has a 79% decrease in the allocation to the Ministry of Environment, and the new government that was just announced on Saturday has a gendarme general as Minister of the Environment. Which doesn't sound like there's going to be much governance, at least for the interim of the transition. So, although there's a 300% increase in the presidency, and some of that could go into the environment, but I doubt it very strongly. So back to the question: are there enough of you guys and your funding sources to sustain this extraordinary natural endowment until something gives strongly, and there is an international return on an official basis to Madagascar?
Could pass it straight across the table, and we'll get her.
Thank you. My name is Kane Westman. I coordinate our marine conservation activities that Matt talked about earlier. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the sea level rise question. I just recently went to a presentation in Mauritius that someone was presenting about modeling sea level rise in the western Indian Ocean. And actually in southwest Madagascar, there's very minimal rise projected, which is great. What we're more concerned about is increasing weather events, cyclones, tropical storms, and coral mortality due to high temperatures and acidity in the water, and then leading not to lower food security. And then, Kristen, I just had a quick question about follow-up about the champion communes. It's been several years now. What's happened to them? Are they still going strong, or has there been any update?
I think we better give you guys a chance to
Yeah,
divide and conquer
yeah.
here. Yeah.
Okay, let me take the first, I guess, three questions. So first of all, in terms of institutions and policy, that was a major element of the beginning of the U.S. government support in 1990. And in terms of what is called, for people who know USAID terminology, non-project assistance, where there were certain conditionalities that were set up to put into place specific policies, environmental impact assessment, looking at the forest policy, looking at environmental law, looking at NGO law, and also, so there were those policies and the legal framework actually in Madagascar, everyone said, is very strong. It's the application of the laws. That's where the governance, we always come back to the governance piece. That's where it falls short. And so the other thing that we tried to look at that moment in 1990 was in looking at the institutions and looking at the government structure. There was given the importance of Madagascar's biodiversity, there was a decision made by the donors, I have to say by the donors at that point, that the donors would be better to invest their money in new institutions that would be created than to try and reinforce the existing government structure. I'm talking about natural resource management. So there was a creation of Madagascar National Park. That's what it's called now. It was called ANGAP at the time. There was a National Office of the Environment and a National Association for Environmental Actions, and other institutions that an incredible amount of support was given at the national level. And the idea of creating the National Office of the Environment was that they were responsible for environmental impact assessments, so that you would have that independent body reviewing environmental impact assessments, and while at the same time the government would have to sign off at the end. Now, what happened was, what you had talked about in terms of these institutions, of course, had more resources than their counterparts in the government. It caused a lot of competition, a lot of not willingness to work together. And so a decision was made halfway through this 18-year environmental action plan to build up the support of the Forestry Service. But they always kept the National Park Service separate from the Forestry Service. So there was a real effort to do that kind of over the last 8 years. And, I think that was positive in that way. We worked a lot with the U.S. Forest Service, did bring a lot of people to, a handful to the U.S. There were some of trying to bring some of those people to have them be part of those more six-week programs, not degree programs, although there were 7 people that were sent on in terms of a degree program. But really focusing at the national level. And I think you did see that playing itself out. I mean, for me, who's there for 28 years, a lot of the colleagues who used to sit across the table with me were becoming ministers, were really forward thinkers. You had an emerging of, what I would say everyone around between the ages of 45 and 50 going into those key positions. And those were the years that I said, a lot of promise. And all of those individuals now, and I ran into one on Sunday, at a Malagasy